If you're in construction, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Constructive Behaviors Podcast. I'm your host, Barb Allen. I'm a woman with decades of experience in the construction industry, and most of it on the job site. I know how rewarding this industry can be, but like you, I also know that we could improve. Let's work together to make changes from the inside out. Ever wondered how different people's experiences are, even when they're on the same career path? Today's episode is going to give you, myself, and my guest, Boyd Worsham, a glimpse into exactly that. On paper, Boyd's and my career paths have been crazily similar. An article written about him on the Build Your Future website talked about his career progression. And as I read it, I noticed it could have been taken directly from my bio that I give organizations prior to speaking engagements. And being someone who is driven by curiosity, I immediately began thinking, although so similar on paper, I would love to have a conversation that allows us both to see how different our experiences actually were on that same path. And today, I get to do that. My guest is Boyd Worsham. He is the president of the National Center for Construction Education and Research, and I cannot wait to get this conversation started. So thank you for joining me, Boyd.
Oh, thank you for having me, Barb. It's a pleasure.
I seriously, when Tim Taylor introduced us. I did an interview with Tim in episode 21 of this Constructive Behaviors podcast. And as he and I got to know each other a little more, he was like, okay, wait, your story and Boyd's story are so similar on your career paths. You guys have to talk. And when I started doing a little research, I was like, oh yeah, we absolutely do. So with you and I, like we have different ages, we are different genders. We have differences in when higher ed played a role into our careers. But we both started with a goal to be a job site superintendent. I mean, when we went into the industry, that was the goal for both of us. And for me, mine didn't happen until I was a junior in college. I didn't even think about going into construction till I was a junior in college. And you, from what I've researched, you've had a teacher in junior year of high school that introduced you into it. So tell us about that teacher and what about it really interested you into the construction industry.
Yeah, gladly, Barb. I think our careers have been very similar. Like I said, a little different timing and sequencing, but very similar. Yeah, in high school and even through middle school, I went to school in Clay County, Florida, just south of Jacksonville. And career and technical education, called vocational education when I was in high school, was very prominent and still is today. These same programs exist and have existed continuously since I was in school. I graduated high school in 1980, so I'm obviously dating myself pretty well there. But that county was serious about career and technical education even 40 years ago. And so I went through several, carpentry classes through middle school and early days of high school. And then in my 10th and 11th grade, senior year of high school, we had a carpentry instructor by the name of Hervey Robinson, who was a former superintendent on construction projects. So he treated us like adults when we walked in the classroom. You had to apply for this man's class.
Oh, wow.
Where you just got in. You applied. You had to have a fairly high GPA. I did quite well in my academic classes as well. And so I applied for that class, and he accepted me and 19 other students in each of his junior and senior programs for a total of 40 students at any given time. And what was really cool about it, Barb, is we built portable classrooms. I mean, we weren't building, little projects. We built portable classrooms, and we built 4 of them every 9 weeks.
That's awesome.
And so it was a production program, right? And we were in there for 3 hours a day. And then at each 9 weeks, when they had what we called Teachers Planning Day back then, the house movers would come in and move these portables out, as we called them, to these campuses around our county. My county is I still live in that county. It's my home base. those portables still exist on all these schools. Now, there are a lot of teachers that like to be out of those 40-year-old portables right today, but they're still pretty prominent on those campuses. And they were 28 by 52, 28 feet by 52 foot structures with Dutch hip roofs, and really, really nicely done. And so he was serious about what we did in that classroom, and in his classes. We still went through our books, right? So we learned the book learning, but then we executed the work every day for 3 hours a day, and we built these portables. He was an extremely influential person in my life. Now, what he did that was really cool was he decided that, he didn't want to hear all about the leather jackets and all that for all the sports folks. He created a Gold Hammer Award that he gave out to the most outstanding student in his class each year. So my goal from the day I walked in that class, or slightly before, because I'd heard about this award, was to be the recipient of the Gold Hammer Award given to me by Mr. Robinson in my senior year. So I was successful and won that award. And during that award ceremony on campus, a gentleman by the name of Preston Haskell, who is the founder of the Haskell Company in Jacksonville, Florida, and really the grandfather of design build in this country, quite frankly. Design build was Mr. Haskell's concept. DBIA is one of his projects 30 years ago, whenever he started that, or 40. So Mr. Haskell was the guest speaker at the award ceremony. And after the award ceremony, came over to me and asked me if I needed a job. Well, yeah, I'm graduating high school in a couple of weeks. I need a job. He said, "What job do you want?" I said, "Yours." He said, "Come try." And I tried for 38 years. I stayed there for 38 years. It went from carpenter helper when they hired me out of, right after I graduated, till I left there as the vice president of field operations for the organization. So that's kind of the story I'm getting into it.
I love the Gold Hammer story, because I think you're an overachiever. I think I'm an overachiever. Like, we see something and we're like, "Oh, I want that." Right. And there are other people who are like, "Oh, I don't want to chase after that." But I'm curious if you think that that man came to speak to you because you were the Gold Hammer winner, or did he go talk to everyone, or did he select people that he said, "Hey, do you want a job?"
No, I think that he came to me because of that. And in fact, I know that, Barb, because he and I obviously worked together for 38 years and became great friends. And he was a very, very much a mentor in my career, took me under his wing right after he hired me. But we at the Haskell Company, where I worked all those years, we went back about 10 years later and started sponsoring these Gold Hammer banquets for that county.
Awesome.
Why didn't I, right? What low-hanging fruit? I've got an instructor
That's right.
me who the best student in his class is.
That's
So
right.
yeah, so we sponsored a banquet. We changed it up a bit after he retired, and we had all the instructors in the 5 carpentry programs in our county at the banquet to give their award, and then we offered jobs to these students. And many of these students, these Gold Hammer winners, work at the Haskell Company today in many areas of the company. And to this day, Haskell still does that and sponsors that event every year in that county, and have expanded it to welding, electrical, and what was formerly called drafting. I'm not sure what they call it today in the school environment. But yeah, so very, very targeted. Get the instructor to identify his best and put them in front of you and see if you can get them working for you, right?
I love that they recognize that was such a great and easy way to recruit, is to be part, not only be part, but start to sponsor that. And so I think about high school, and I remember there being an option for shop class. I think that's all I remember being called, shop class, or there was home ec, or you took another different elective. And I was adamant against home ec. I wanted nothing to do with learning to cook or to sew. That was not my thing. I don't think I gave shop much of a thought at all, because I knew I wanted to be in music. I was in the madrigal choir and the show. Like I did the singing and the acting and that kind of stuff. And I just really wish that when I was in high school, there had been more of I'm going to use the word promotion that would get more people into those. Because when I was in there, it was kind of a mindset. There are certain people who go into shop class, and these are the people who weren't going to college or something like that. And I knew my mom was a high school math teacher. So I knew I was going to college, whether I liked it or not. That was something that I was going to be doing. And so shop was different. And man, I look back and I'm like, man, how that really could have not only changed my career, but I love working with my hands. If I could have gotten into a shop class, or I mean, I could have, but if they had drawn me in, and I think that's what school programs need to work on, is really drawing more diversity of people in instead of what the typical has been. And so I'm just excited to see how schools are doing that more today.
Yeah, Barb, let me share something with you that I think about a lot.
Yeah.
My carpentry instructor, Mr. Robinson, never talked to me about, or anybody in that class, about all he was going to do was teach us to be a carpenter. Now, this was serious. Like I said, these were serious classes. We learned how to frame a structure, how to sheathe it, how to do everything. But he never talked to us about that being the carpentry craft being the end all. He taught us the business of construction. And that was a difference. See, we didn't go into it. I think it's hard for any young person today, or even in my day of being a young person, to really get extremely excited about any one craft for the rest of your life, right? I will always be a carpenter. In fact, after I took this job here at NCCER as the CEO, somebody introduced me as I was formerly a carpenter. I am always a carpenter.
That's right.
Nobody's taking it away from me. And if I could hang only one shingle out, it would be master carpenter. But what this man taught me was, the way he delivered the message was, I am connecting you with an industry where you can create real wealth, real success, and make a difference and do something you love. That's what's different, right? When we get somebody, I don't care how passionate you are about the craft, everybody wants to know there's progression in their life, right? In every way. And so we need to talk about leadership roles. We need to talk about, ownership of businesses. We need to talk about, foreman, superintendent, and all those other things. Learn the craft. That is your undergraduate degree, if you will.
Right.
But let's think about the business of construction. That is such a wonderful and dynamic business that even you're just better at running the business if you have the craft knowledge. So I think that's a big point we need to stress to our schools and to others who are trying to recruit people into the industry. Let's talk about the big picture, not a craft necessarily being the end game. And if it is, so be it. It's noble, wonderful work, right?
That's
There's
right.
absolutely nothing wrong with that, but just wanted to stress that point.
Well, and I had several years ago, I had a young woman reach out to me. She had gone to her school counselor and said, she was getting ready to graduate and she wanted to be a carpenter, and her school counselor didn't know where to even send her, and just kind of told her, start Googling. And from Googling, she found the National Association of Women in Construction, and I was president at the time, and she just reached out and said, hey, do you have any advice for me? And I was like, advice? Are you kidding me? Like, come shadow me for a day. Like, come in and let me experience, and let me share this story with you. And she came to me wanting to be a carpenter. And I was like, hey, that's amazing. I loved, when I was physically building. But I want you to know there are other opportunities out there as well, because I want you to know everything that's out there in this business, not just one part of it. And you get to choose, but you need to know what's out there. And she herself is on the path to become a superintendent right now as well. And I love that it's your teacher in high school was more about the whole industry instead of just the trade, giving people the options so they know. Yeah. So after high school, I went to college, and I was a junior in college before I even found out that construction management was a degree. And when I did, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing. This is exactly what I want to do. So I graduated with my degree in construction management, and I wanted to be a job site superintendent. And so I was hired, and I was placed into the carpenter's apprenticeship program. And just like you, worked my way up to journeyman and carpenter foreman. What I'm curious about is how the time frame is different, because you went into the apprenticeship right out of high school, and I went in right after college. And how long until you became a foreman and you were running a crew?
Barb, it wasn't very long, to be honest with you, just a few years. I was on a job in South Carolina building condos on a resort coastal island there, and I showed some initiative, quite frankly. You know, we were doing some fairly large vertical form work, and there was a better way to do it than the way we were doing it. And quite frankly, my carpenter foreman, who I liked a lot at the time, and very knowledgeable gentleman, he would not hear of doing it any different. So I had to show a little courage and take a little risk and go around him to the superintendent and said, I can stack these towers up, these stair towers and elevator core towers up quicker than we're doing it if you'll let me. Now I was a kid, right? Superintendent said, okay, show me. And it worked. And you know, because I wasn't gonna let it fail right after that. Right? And so we did, and at that point, then that crew became mine. And from there on, you know, it was carpenter foreman and assistant superintendent and superintendent, kind of like what you're saying. But Bar, let me go back to something you just mentioned that's really kind of ironic. About 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of getting to address a group at Procore's annual conference in Chicago.
Yeah.
And great conference. I've done it several years now. And in that presentation, several young ladies in the audience, young women in the audience, raised their hand and said that they had gone into architecture programs in college because they had no idea they were even building construction management programs. Now, these were young people. These folks had only been out of college a few years, I would bet, working for major companies here in our major construction firms in our country. So it's still happening, right? So not only do people not realize in the craft side that you want to be striving for leadership roles and superintendent role and overseeing the project, we have people going in to architecture and engineering fields who really want to be hands-on builders, because we still haven't successfully communicated that, I think, out to the world too, that building construction management is a wonderful field, a wonderful degree offered by, I think, 150 or so universities in this country, or more now probably. And so I think there's some lack of communication even at that level, which you experienced years ago.
Totally agree. And I think it's I think as a whole, our industry doesn't do a good job of marketing our industry in general. I think we think our buildings are the marketing, and we're not doing a good job of marketing to young people about this amazing industry that it is and how many opportunities there are. Like, it's not just about being a worker or being a superintendent or a project manager. There are so many different jobs that you can have in this industry. And we do not do a good job, this is my opinion, of marketing that. Mm-hmm. We've got to do better.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with you 100%. And there are many great jobs out there. And I think, and I don't think anybody that's listening to this podcast would disagree that we don't do a good job that we do not do well at marketing. And but you think about it, the industry we're in, I mean, we go, right? We're working hard to finish a project. We've got another one waiting. We've got to start. We haven't taken the time to make the rest of the world aware of how great these jobs are and what a wonderful industry we have. And Barb, nobody chooses something they don't know. You know, I mean, think about it. Yeah. You don't choose things that you don't know. And we're still an unknown to be, you know, this massive industry. We're still an unknown, and we've got to figure out how do we help young people to know who we are and what the opportunities are, and how do we help the influencers in their lives, parents, guardians, teachers, guidance counselors, whoever it may be, to understand the opportunities and the benefits of our industry.
Yeah, and I would like to add the other component of that. They can't be what they don't know, but I think we also as women struggle. We can't be what we can't see. That's and true. You know, I grew up with my dad being in construction, but I never thought about it as a career for me. And something happened to me this week that I I may tear up as I say this now. I was literally bawling when I read this. My 10-year-old niece, she won a regional building competition, and she was written up in an article, and this adorable picture of her. But in the article, it said, you know, she has an aunt who works in construction. And I just thought, man, that's it. I'm able for young women to see me so they see they can be it. And from this article, this strong, courageous 10-year-old girl is in this picture, and other girls are going to see her. Her age girls are going to see her in this picture and go, construction, wait, Josie's doing that? Like, what is that? And just the whole life cycle circle of that being see it to be it just really hit me hard that day. And I think we're making some progress toward that, but they need to know what's out there, and they need to see someone who looks like them doing it to really push more people into it. I didn't see someone that looked like me, and I did it and I was successful. So you don't have to have that, but dang, it sure helps. It
Yeah.
gives you that extra something.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think there are a lot of folks, female, underrepresented populations that don't necessarily see themselves in this industry. They haven't had somebody in their family that's been successful in it or done it. So it's an unknown, right?
Yeah, it is.
But you're right. We are making some headway. Is it slow? Is it later than we want? Yes. Is it ultimately, in my opinion, the solution we need? I believe it is. I really do. Right. I think that I've ran a lot of projects. I've overseen a lot of projects in my operations role with my firm. Went to every project we built when I did that job for 20 plus years. And, we need the smartest, most talented, most dedicated people we can possibly have, and nothing else should matter other than their interests, their aptitude, and their skills. And that's where I think we're very rapidly getting to as an industry. Now we have to figure out how to make all that work, because it's different. Now we know how to make it work in our offices. We know how to make it work in our fixed establishments, but for some reason we still struggle with how to apply it on the job site.
Yeah.
But it's not that hard. We just have to recognize the benefit of this, the opportunity this brings, and the solution this provides. And I think we'll see progressive, smart firms continue to embrace and solve for this problem. And we'll be a much better industry for it, and quite frankly, have better projects for it.
Right.
That's the key.
Right. Well, and talking about the leadership rungs, you were promoted to carpenter foreman fairly quickly. I was also promoted fairly quickly once I was out of college. But when you think about that, I had 4 years before my 2 years, so you going straight from high school into it, you were able to start feeling and experiencing that leadership rung sooner than I was. Because you got into it sooner, right? And managing people is a learned skill set. Like, you're not good at it when you start, no matter how good you think you are. It takes a few years before you become good at it. And so you definitely had a leg up on me there, because you started right from there. But think about superintendent. So we had the same path from carpenter to foreman to assistant superintendent to superintendent. But you had more field experience. I mean, hands down, no question in my mind, you are a better carpenter than I was. I only wore my bags full time for a few years before I got into a position where it was bags off. Mm-hmm. And so you have more of that skill set, that understanding of carpenter. What are the things that you think having more of that experience made you really successful as a superintendent?
I think, Barb, there's an ability that is developed as a craft professional, and that's absolutely the way we term it around National Center for Construction Education and Research, NCCER, is craft professional. And as a craft professional, you really start to visualize how things are built. And so, there's nothing I look at that I can't pretty well understand how it was put together, and that's really important. especially from a constructability review standpoint, especially from a cost standpoint, and obviously to be able to build effective and well thought out schedules. So, so for me, and I see it in other people. I could see it in superintendents. I could see it in project managers. I see it in other people who have that field experience and have actually lived that assembly of a project many times. They see it, they know what's above that ceiling, they know what's behind that drywall. They may not know what that steel connection exactly is, but they know it's going to be one of these, right? Pretty much. But so I think that's one of the best things. The other piece I think was really really beneficial of all my field time is exactly what you mentioned, my ability to deal with people. It is superintendent job is the craziest job in the world, unless you are absolutely have the right personality for it, right?
Yep.
If you have 1,000 things coming at you at one time and you get to figure out, how to handle them all, know which ones you can think about a little bit, know which ones you have to react to, trust your gut, have instinct, know how to use the data and the information you have, and know when you just have to call it and go. It's just a crazy job, and that only comes with experience and with people skills to know who to go to find out what you have to know, and also to be able to evaluate your risk based on how good your team is.
Yeah.
Think about it. There's many times where we have to sit back and say, okay, I don't have all the information. I don't know everything I need to know to make that perfect call, yet I have to make that call. How good is my team if I don't get this call right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I need that team to help me get it right if I didn't originally, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's understanding people. That's really understanding your team and how to work with your team and how to inspire and motivate your team. And that comes from working with your team.
Yeah, what I tell people when they don't really understand what superintendent is, I tell them that, it's the person. Your job as a superintendent is to get everyone on site that have different agendas and different opinions moving in the same direction. And to do that, you have to figure out how each of them work individually. There's different ways to push different buttons, and you have to be willing to learn from them as well. It's not your way or the highway. You have to learn to read people and be interested in them. And I always say the only thing I read better than blueprints are people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a quality I grew up with. And so that's something that really helped me in that role. But as you talk about it, I can see how you feel about the superintendent role. And I felt the same way. It was the best job. I loved being a job site superintendent. And yet something made me say, okay, I want to do something different. I'm curious, what was that something that made you say, okay, I'm going to leave this amazing job and I'm going to go be in the office side. I want to help manage and run the entire company. What was that like for you?
Well, that's a great question. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't thought a lot about that, Barb, but I think my reaction to the question is ambition. For me, you don't stop until you finish work, right? You do. And I think you look at where can I bring the most value to an organization. And I think that, you also want to learn, you want to share what you know. And when you get into operations, you get to do that, right? You go, you get to decide, who the next superintendents coming into your organization are, or those promoting up. How do you make sure you help them be successful when they roll into your organization? And that's really key for an operations person, because it can be a bit overwhelming. You walk into a company, especially a company like I came from, where there was long tenure. A lot of people were long tenured there. I was not unusual there to have had the years of service I had.
Same for me.
Somebody comes in, my job was getting them to join us if in fact, we wanted them to join. And then if you just throw them out to a project and you don't support them, you've got a team of veteran project managers and all these other people who've been here forever. The superintendent role can be sort of a little lonely spot sometimes. And I realized that I could support that, right? And I could be that, and I had enough clout to say, no, project managers, that's not your biggest problem. You does not have what he needs to be successful.
Right.
Your job is getting him that,
That's right.
him or her that. And so, so I think that part of it, but I think for me, it's just always been a high level of ambition. I've loved running projects. I would probably say my best role, the most enjoyable role I ever had, Barb, was carpenter foreman. I loved the carpenter foreman job. Didn't pay as well, and it wasn't, but it was a step on the ladder, right, to making it to the top of an organization. But I joke about it, but I loved it because I was still actively out there with my crew doing the things I love doing, and that is physically building things.
Yeah.
Yet I could still go in the office and get a cup of coffee when I wanted to, and use real facilities when I wanted to, and not have, so it was just different, right? But you still had responsibility, but you didn't have all of the responsibility of a superintendent. Now, of course, I was carpenter foreman when I was young, and I probably was not ready to be a superintendent at that time. But not far after that, through some circumstances, I wound up finishing a 12-story project in Los Angeles, right near LAX, in the early 80s, because superintendent left and they trusted me to finish it. And I was about 2 years old and did, and took everything I had in me to do it. But, I did it. Me and the team did it. I just had the pleasure of leading them. But yeah, so I think it's, I joke about the superintendent role. It is absolutely, think about this, Barb. It is such a unique role. Anybody that's smart enough to do it is smart enough to not do it, right? First of all.
Right.
and think so your job is taking 1 million parts and pieces, or maybe it's 10 million, who knows, right? Maybe it's many more depending on the project, but taking millions of parts and pieces, putting them together in the proper order per the instructions, keeping everybody safe doing that, turn out a quality project, and oh, by the way, make money doing it.
Right.
In what can be adverse conditions sometimes.
Yeah.
So you think about it. Anybody that could do that job could run the heck out of a factory or a fixed establishment operation, right? And you can do it when you can do it the way we do it. I just think it's cool as anything, right? I mean, to me, it's like the perfect job, and also I loved it, and I thought that part of my role as the operations person was to inspire others to love it, and everything.
Well, and talking about ambition, you at some point as you transitioned, I think out of superintendent, you decided you were going to go after your master's in business administration. Yeah. And I mean, that in itself is a feat. But what I didn't know, and I read this in, I think one of the articles that I read about you didn't have a bachelor's, which, I mean, I understand you didn't have a bachelor's, but you didn't have to get a bachelor's before you got your master's. And I think that that's important for people to know, because you explain why.
Well, for me, I was 40 in my early 40s when, Mr. Haskell slid a folder across the table at lunch one day and said, I want you to go get your MBA. He said, you're running big pieces of this business, and they're important pieces of this business. And I know you know how to do that, but I want you to have that formal education, and that I think will help you to be more successful. And I was excited to do so. And so, for the accreditation standards of the university, up to 5% of their, class members in their EMBA program didn't have to have an undergrad as long as you had 20 years of industry experience. And
that's
so,
awesome.
I went that way. Love it. What a great opportunity, right? I mean, I worked as hard as I've ever worked in my life during those 18 months, because I still had a full-time job, and this educational opportunity was not easy in some areas for me. I had to work extremely hard to do it, but I wasn't going to fail at it, right? And I knew the opportunity that was slid across that table that day to me, and that was extremely important, and it made me and the education was extremely beneficial. I can't tell you how many times I've applied those lessons to what I've done ever since then. So like I said, it was just a really different way of going about it, but the perfect way for me. I had zero desire to go to college when I walked out of high school.
Yeah.
Zero desire. I didn't want to do that. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to go build large major projects, and I wanted to run those projects. That was, as far as I was thinking, that was the pinnacle, and I was going to get there as quickly as I could.
Yeah.
In many ways, it still was the pinnacle of my career. I mean, running major projects is a pinnacle in anyone's career.
It is. It really is. I just love that listeners get a chance to hear you can work in the field for 20 some years and then go get a master's if you want it to start your own business or to work in a higher place in a business, whatever. There is still that opportunity that doesn't take the 4 years to also get your bachelor's with it. And I didn't know that was a thing. And I want more people to know that there are opportunities such as that, so that you can go do it when you're ready, if you ever decide you want to do that. But I want to talk about, you and I both got to a point, high level management within our general contracting organizations, and then we decided to leave and go help the industry in a different way. So, tell us that story. What made you say, okay, it's time?
Yeah. Well, great question. And it was a hard decision for me. I loved where I worked. I worked for a great company. It's still a great company. I interact with them frequently now. Just think the world of them. Still, a little bit of ownership in it through the ESOP now. All my other stuff has been purchased back, but can't say enough good, right? I'm one of those lucky folks who knew what they were going to do when they came out of high school and found the exact right place to do it. Just a wonderful place to work. And but I also contributed to that, right? I didn't just, take from that. I contributed to it.
Sure.
I suffered through some bad projects, right? You don't quit because you're on a bad job, right? You finish, they let you move on to something else, But I think so. So I never thought I would leave, Barb. I had 38 years to the day when my last day there was my 38th anniversary.
Wow.
I thought I would stay to probably about 42, 45 years. But I sat on the board at NCCER, and I'd been affiliated with NCCER for 20 years in some role, either in committee work or sitting on their board. Knew the leadership here, knew the organization almost since inception. My CEO at Haskell, Steve Halverson, had been a chairman of the board here. I took over his board position when he exited after his chairmanship. So I realized that I could do something bigger for the industry.
Yeah.
I love building projects. I love what I did, but I want NCCER to truly be the resource to change millions of people's lives for the better through construction awareness and construction education. And this is the place to do it. This is another wonderful opportunity that presented itself to me. And I believe in this industry so much, and in the organizations that make up this industry, that I saw it as the opportunity for me to truly make a difference in the industry, for all the right reasons. We're a not-for-profit organization. Every nickel that comes in this organization goes back to the mission, and the mission is to improve our industry through education. And so, to me, it was the ultimate opportunity. And I wanted, so when I was approached by some other board members about me considering taking the organization over, it was a really hard decision. Because I loved where I was at, but I think I can do more good here. And I think at the end of the day, I can accomplish more. I think my knowledge of the industry brings some value to this role. My knowledge of how to run a business brings value. Most importantly, I know how wonderful our industry is. And I don't think you can do this job unless you really understand the benefits of this industry and the value it brings to our society, our economy, and the value it can bring to people's lives. And so I think I'm the right person at the right time to do this job. And so when it presented itself, I felt really, really strongly that I needed to do the job. And so, like I said, it was hard to leave. Loved where I was. Building projects and overseeing projects and building people was wonderful. I just get to build a lot more of them here.
Yeah.
And many of them at the younger age, right? Because the other thing we have to do, Barb, is not only get folks into our industry, we have to retain them. And that's going to be done through training, education, and many other things. So,
right.
So this is kind of my opportunity, to be honest with you, I think.
Yeah. 95% of your words are exactly my words. Like we have this love of this industry that built us, and we're at a point where we're like, okay, we're going to take our successes and we're going to go back and help build the industry bigger and better. And I just love that similarity. I mean, it's It's really amazing to me how similar our whole trajectory has been, and we've had different experiences, but we've kind of ended up in a very similar role of what we're doing now. And I I I'm so excited for that. So tell me, to wrap this up, what is your biggest passion right now? What is your biggest goal for the industry right now?
My biggest goal is to it's kind of my biggest worry and my biggest goal, right? They're simple, they're the same. We as an industry are not attracting enough people to this industry.
Right.
And that is a failure. We have wonderful things, wonderful opportunities to provide to people. As you've said a couple times in this conversation, our industry is diverse. Our industry has opportunity at many levels. Our industry creates careers for millions of people every year and needs a couple million people coming its way in the next decade or so or shorter. I worry that we as an industry are not doing enough to create the awareness of those great opportunities. And my biggest goal is for NCCER to work with the other great organizations out there that are trying to solve for this problem, and to jointly, all of us, lay all the baggage aside and get together and truly let people know how great this industry is, and become that industry of choice in this country, as it should be, for the right people, right? We want to make sure they are folks like you and I who have the passion for it, the interest in it, and the skills to do it. But I believe there are millions of them out there who, if we don't get this right, Barb, will never get the opportunity to have the pleasure in their work that we've had, nor will they get the opportunity to optimize their wealth generation, and in some cases, improve their family situation that they get in this industry. So that's kind of my biggest goal is how do we make the world aware of how great this can be for them?
Well, and you're absolutely right. We have to come together, because there are too many organizations that see each other as competitors, and we're not at a place in the world right now that we can be competitors like that. We have to work together. AGC, ABC, NAWIC, like NCCER, we all have to work together to forward our industry. And I think that there are so many, like I have noticed since I left the general contracting world a year and a half ago, how many people out there are trying to start things without realizing there are already people out there working on them. Let's figure out how to advertise what it is that we're doing and get those people to come help, instead of having them start from scratch. Because there's so much of that I hear out there as I do these interviews. They're like, oh, I want to start this or this. And I'm like, wait, I just found out somebody's already doing this, connecting those people so that we can do it together. And I 100% agree with you. We've got to come together, and we have to better market the industry so that we can get the amazing people that will really build this industry up in the future for us.
No, I think you're right, Barb. And all these organizations, the ones you've mentioned and many more, are all working hard on this.
Yes.
We need to figure out how to do it together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And really make this a truly scalable initiative based on all of our bandwidths and strengths.
Well, thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed this, and I am on board anyway in which I can help NCCER or any organization out there. I want to help in whatever way I can. So I look forward to future opportunities of conversations and making this what we want it to be.
Okay. Well, thank you, Barb. I greatly appreciate your time and you allowing me to share my ideas and thoughts. So I look forward to our next conversation.
If you know someone that could benefit from this particular episode, then share it with them. Or if you want to continue to learn about the untapped and underutilized resources that will take your business to the next level, then follow the podcast. You don't want to miss an episode where we discuss what you needed to hear. And lastly, there is a link in the show notes that will allow you to reach out to me directly if you want to accelerate that learning curve. Thanks for listening. Talk soon.